Hello, welcome back. I got a request to do a review of this Beretta 692 X-Trap, and I don't have a Beretta 692 X-Trap, I've got a 690. And so there are a few differences with the 692 X-Trap to the 690 Black Edition Trap. Excuse me. And one of the differences is that you have an adjustable trigger. You can move the trigger forward or you can move the trigger back. And it's got an adjustable high rib. So it's got a high rib and you can adjust it at the back. You turn a wheel and it can go up and down, and there's a wheel at the front with little lines, and you can turn the wheel and the front of the rib will go up and down. You can also, it also has a BFAR system, which means you can add weights to the front of the gun and weights to the back of the gun. And empty gun. All Berettas, when they leave the factory, come balanced. And all you can see how stiff the gun is, and it's 2 months old. All Berettas balance, they put it on a scale. The scale has a little top about this wide, and it's got all these little markings. And they put it on top of the scale like that, right on the center of this hinge pin. And then if the gun goes down, they put a bit of weight in the stock. But all Berettas leave the factory perfectly balanced at that hinge pin. The 690 comes ready for the BFAR system, but it hasn't got it, whereas the 692 comes with the BFAR system, and they give you the weights that you can add to the gun. And the 692 also has an old over-molded plastic lever, so it feels soft to the touch, the lever. And that's basically the difference between the 692 and the 690. And the 690 series replaced the 682s about 2013. So the 690 series replaced the 682s. Okay, so the request was for the 692 X-Trap with the high rib. And this person wanted to know about the advantages of having a high rib on your gun. So what are the advantages of having a high rib? Well, how did a high rib start off? To my knowledge, high ribs started off because when the barrels got hot, there was a heat haze emanating from the barrels. So when you looked over the barrels, the air got warmer and there was a bit of a haze. So they figured if we look a bit higher than the barrels, we'll eliminate that haze. That's not a really big reason to add a high rib, but that, to my knowledge, is how high ribs started. So what does a high rib do? It allows the shooter to shoot in a more erect position, so you can stand more upright. You don't have to lean down into the gun, so your face is more upright. Your eyes are squarer, and you're supposed to get a greater field of vision because you're looking like that instead of like that. So that's one of the advantages. The high rib guns are good for targets that are going out and for targets that are coming at you because they don't need a lot of lead. And so you just bring up the gun to the target, bang, and the gun does the rest. And the high rib is, like we said, better for shooters that have got an upright stance, or for people with a very long neck. Because if you've got a long neck, then you're going to have to crouch down into the gun. Whereas if it's got a high rib, your head can stay higher up instead of having to crouch into the gun. However, to my knowledge, they do not move as smoothly. The high rib guns do not move as smoothly as the lower rib guns, and high rib guns can cause too much muzzle awareness. We got a lot of hardware up the front. We got the muzzles, we got the the high rib, we've got the little wheel to adjust them and everything, so they can cause a little bit too much muzzle awareness. And so, some other things about high ribs. They're not as good on crossing targets. So these guns tend to shoot very high. You just barely brush the target and shoot. And so they do make the job easier on targets that are going away from you. But on crosses, they need a bit of getting used to because they generally shoot very high. So canting also becomes a problem with high rib guns. So what is this canting? Well, when we mount our gun, we want our barrels to be perpendicular with the ground, perpendicular with the ground. So we don't want it like that, and we don't want it like that. We want it perpendicular, and that's what canting is. And so, if we have a normal shotgun, we have our rib here, top barrel, bottom barrel. If we do cant the gun a little bit, the orange shows how much we've canted it. With a high rib gun, the problem becomes more pronounced if we cant the gun, because there's our rib, which is only as thick as the bore of the barrel. So there's our rib, there's our top barrel, and there's our bottom barrel. And if you can see that the cant is more affected with a high rib gun because we're looking up there, but the bottom barrel's way down there. And if you have a really, really high rib, then it becomes even more pronounced. So canting can be a problem. And then gun mount is even more critical with a high rib gun because the eye is further away from the center line of the bore. So with a normal gun, and it's empty, with a normal gun, we're looking across that bead, and so our eye is there, and the center line of the bore is there. But with a high rib, we're looking up here. That's where our eye thing is, where our eye is looking along the rib, and there's the center line of the bore. So with the bottom barrel, there's our bottom barrel. That's where we're looking on a normal gun. With a high rib gun, our eye is way up there. That I don't think is a particularly good thing. And so what we want, I believe, that if we have a normal gun with a normal rib, it leads to more instinctive and natural shooting. Our eye is looking along where the gun shoots instead of looking up on this high plane. It doesn't seem natural to me. So consider buying a high rib though if you have an upright stance, you don't like leaning forward, or you have a long neck. So consider it for those two circumstances. There is really no clear advantage to a high rib or a normal rib. And I think, like I said, that normal rib guns provide a more natural shooting style because you're looking closer to the center line of the bore. And before the other thing is, before going out and buying these high rib guns, make sure that you shoot one a lot before you actually go out and put out all that money. I believe a high rib gun is certainly not for beginners. I think for beginners, normal rib would be much better. Instead of forking out a lot of money buying a gun with a high rib, there are companies that produce high ribs. They produce them 10 mil, 20 mil, 30 mil. They produce all different sizes of ribs, different heights, and they can be attached to the existing rib. They've got this little tiny little clamp, and it clamps on to your existing rib, and they can also be adjusted. That's a very inexpensive way of having a high rib gun. There's not a lot of information. I've never shot one on a short rib gun, and so the high rib starts halfway and then goes up. It's only at the front, but I really think that would again cause more muzzle awareness, and that's not what we want. We want to look at the target. We focus on the target, and our gun has to shoot where we look, and then we will hit that clay. So I hope that that's given you something to think about, high ribs. But before you go out and buy one, I would certainly, if I wanted a high rib, I would certainly look at those ribs that you can buy, and you can put them on your gun. So whether you have a high rib gun or a normal gun like mine, happy shooting and stay well.